Good evening, and welcome again to Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott, and tonight we're going to return to one of my favorite subjects, the arts, and how the arts can be used in schools, and how we can help people who may not otherwise have access to the arts to enjoy them as some of us have throughout our lives. Our guests tonight are Beth Isaacs, who is a member of the board of PING, that is providing instruments for the next generation, and one of the next generation who's been provided an instrument, Kamille Braschar. Kamille, Beth,
Hi.
welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Beth, let's start with you, and let's talk a little bit about what PING is for the benefit of our audience who would have no idea. What is it? Why is it? How did it get started?
PING was started 15 years ago in Oak Park to provide instruments for children originally from 4th through 8th grade. There were a few members of the board who realized that there was an underrepresentation of students who couldn't afford instruments, and felt that it was really important that everybody who wanted to have an opportunity to perform and play music had that chance. And so it was born, I think, at a kitchen table, and there were 14 instruments, and we've grown in so many directions ever since then.
I seem to remember reading in some of the literature about it that parents were looking at a performance on stage and thinking, wait a minute, there are people who are not represented here in this group of students who are performing.
Right.
And
it was at Irving Elementary School, and I think a couple of the board members, or the people who at that point, of course, were not board members, just recognized that there were probably children who didn't have an opportunity because they couldn't afford instruments, and thought it was important that anybody who wanted to play music would have that chance.
So how did you get involved?
Well, one of my good friends was on the board, and she strong-armed me years ago, and there's been no turning back. This is my 9th year on the board. I think PING is a wonderful organization, and I'm really passionate about it, and I just think it's great. And I love having opportunities to get to know students like Kamille, who's wonderful.
So Kamille, you're here, and you play what instrument?
The flute.
The flute, which would make you a flautist,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So how long have you been playing?
I've been playing for 10 years now. I've been involved with PING since 4th grade, so since the beginning of time of my career as a flautist.
The beginning of time? That's a
Beginning
long stretch.
A
Right?
long stretch. It will go farther.
And so are you also then, I've read in some of the literature that some of the high school students step up to be mentors to the younger kids coming in. Are you also doing any mentoring as a high school student?
I'm not a mentor, but I am a member of PING. During my years of high school, I've been mentoring towards other things like freshmen and other things like that. But with PING, I'm a member of it.
But can I say something on that account? Because actually Kamille offered to mentor middle school students. And we've had that program for over 10 years. But we had no flute students in the middle school. And so for that reason, she was not able to,
Well, see, that means you're just going to have to become an advocate. You're going to have to get out there with the middle school kids and say,
of course.
See, you should learn to play flute.
Of course.
So I'm always curious why people pick up the instruments they do. As I may have mentioned, I myself play guitar and bass guitar, but that's sort of, everyone does that, I think, at one time or another in their lives. So what appealed to you about the flute?
Well, in 4th grade, during music class, we would play the recorder all the time, and students that I looked up to that were in 5th grade, they played the flute, and I always thought the flute was just an interesting, instrument. I just really liked how the sounds that came out of the voice of the instrument, how it was just unique, and I just really fell in love with it.
It's spoken like a true musician. So Beth, tell me about PING's mission. I mean, how does the organization either choose the students, or how do the students apply? How does a student get into PING in the first place?
Well, basically, we're there at the middle schools. We go to the middle school one time, and we go to, we have sign-up night, instrument sign-up night. And basically, all the students come who are interested in taking music and signing up for an instrument, regardless of income. And we have our table set up, and students come in and they try out instruments, and they come over to us if they're interested. And if they have applied for free or reduced lunch, then they are eligible to apply for an instrument, and we take it from there.
So does the student have to have played an instrument ever before? Can they just someone walk up cold and say?
Well, basically, in Oak Park, we start with 4th grade. And so 4th and 5th graders can come in, test out an instrument, come over, rent an instrument from us. If you're in 6th grade, that's problematic. So if you're in middle school and you've never played an instrument before, then typically they're not allowed to start in band or orchestra unless they have some kind of summer program or private lesson opportunities. So occasionally we see if we can do something to help those students. But usually it's 4th or 5th grade students, and then they continue on, hopefully, with music.
And so when does it end? When you graduate from high school, is that the typical, you can take this all the way through till?
Well, as a musician, I don't think you should end.
No,
but
I'm hoping that the answer to that would be no.
The Ping program does end after high school, sadly.
But what are your plans to continue after high school?
I would like to minor in music. My future goals are to major in psychology, double major in Spanish, and minor in music. So in my senior year, going into college and filling out college applications, I would like for that to be my future goals in life.
So are you looking at the schools with the best music programs, the best psychology programs, or both?
Both.
That seems to make sense.
Oh, yes.
So Beth, coming back to you, with the students who come in, as much as I understand trying to get students at an early age, if you are, for example, in 6th grade and you decide that music seems like a pretty cool thing, what would be an option for a student like that?
That's actually a school issue. That's sort of a school district policy. So we have 2 middle schools in Oak Park. And actually we have a 6th grade student who came from another district where band instruments were not available. And so this young man decided to play trumpet this year and is not able to be in band because that's the policy. And so I've tried to put him in touch with a trumpet teacher and arrange for some lessons and then see if he can do some mentoring with us so that next year he'll be eligible. But typically, and that's not something that Ping really, we're a small non-for-profit, we're not part of the school system. We try to advocate for kids and, support opportunities for enrichment, for summer camp, for, all sorts of things. But if that's a school policy, then sometimes our hands are tied. So we do what we can, but.
So is the idea of Ping, and Kamille, I'll come back to you because you're actually in this. The idea of Ping is to get students into playing in the student orchestras, right?
Bands or orchestras.
Bands or orchestras. All right, so what type of music? Is it always classical music? Is it jazz music? Is it marching band?
It's more of a classical marching pieces are constructed, but there are available ensembles as jazz ensemble that are available to students after school as an after school activity. There's also marching band that's available to students at my high school. But for the most part, in band class, you play classical pieces or more marches.
So what's your favorite?
I really like marches because the flutes are best at marches. So
really, now somehow I don't think of them as being march instruments. I can kind of hear the tubas or the.
Well, I think the pieces that we play have some sort of significance to a flute being a march type of instrument.
Wow. So what do you plan then as a future marching band after college? There are some professional marching bands, but they're few and far between. How do you see yourself progressing after college?
I see myself playing in a local band. I never played in marching band in high school, but I was always in private lessons, and I'm excited for my future as playing in local bands and private lessoning and maybe giving lessons to other kids, maybe joining with Ping and becoming a mentor, member, or something.
Is that common, Beth, that a student would finish the program at 18 and go off to college and come back and rejoin as an adult?
Well, we have some people who volunteer. I'd say that, what's probably more common is that students like Kamille who have been in the program from elementary school and through the middle school and experienced mentoring, as Kamille did, end up, volunteering to be mentors when they reach high school. I'd say that's probably more common. And as I say that, she was generous enough to offer. But there are times that we have, really eager high school students, and it's a great group of kids who want to do this. And sometimes there's just not that student. So for instance, we had somebody who wanted to mentor cello for the longest time. And last year, in her senior year, she was finally able to do that because for years we had no mentees. We had no 6th, 7th, or 8th graders who played cello. So it really depends. I do want to say in terms of exposure, because you're asking about the type of music, and we do have some what we call mini mentoring workshops. So for our 4th and 5th grade students in November and April at one of the elementary schools, they get a little taste of mentoring. And so the high school mentors come in on a Saturday afternoon and they spend an hour with the little kids so that they see what's going to happen. But we also give them an hour of music. And we have African drumming, Old Town School of Folk Music. We invite different musicians in so that they have that opportunity to experience other sorts of music. And there's concerts, so there's some enrichment opportunities. And another thing that the high school students started doing a few years ago was holding a fundraiser in the spring and making money so that they could take the mentees on a field trip. So every winter, the high school students take the middle school students. So they went to see Dreamgirls in the Loop. They've gone to see productions at Drury Lane. We're thinking of possibly a gospel production. So although I'd say that our kids are playing band and orchestra instruments and typically doing a lot of classical music, some of them are in jazz band, and we do try to have an opportunity to expose them to different kinds of music as well.
So let's talk about, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that, because I think that the music as a whole is so varied, and there are so many different kinds, and now, you know, as, well, the internet is old hat to you, but at the time, I remember when there was no such thing. But with that, you know, being exposed to music from around the world has become so much easier. Just a few clicks of the mouse and you can get music from anywhere, any style. So it's interesting to see how the different kinds of cultures are beginning to meld the music, and so I think having this multicultural exposure, or you know, even with to Broadway musicals, to jazz clubs, to world music, to whatever. But let me take that context and then bring it back to the personal level, and ask you, Kamille, about what music means to you, and what I mean by that is not so much what songs do you want to play or what type of music, but how has it affected you? Has it changed your life in some way, introduced you to new friends, made you think about things differently?
Music to me is life. Honestly, I really think that music has been installed in my persona. My family is into music. My family, my uncle plays guitar. My family is just about music, and being exposed to music and exposing myself to music has changed the person that I am, has developed me to become the person that I am, and I don't know how to explain how, I don't know the words to explain how much music is me, because music, I just don't have words. I really don't.
It is, and I accept that, because I think one of the, as someone who plays myself, I find myself sometimes trying to explain something musically and just say, well, it sounds like this. and that's about the best you can do, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what music is. It's a different language.
I honestly think you have to be exposed to music to understand the language and the content, and live for music to live. It's unexplainable. You just have to experience it yourself. It's just like one of those things, you go to camp and you have to experience camp yourself to get the full information.
Yeah, somehow I missed that experience in my own life. I never went to camp. But,
well, speaking of camp, I went to camp with Pink. But
did you? Well, talk about that. What was the music camp like?
Well, I got a chance to go to 2 different camps. I went to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp for 2 years, 2 years in a row, and I also went to University of Wisconsin-Madison's music clinic. I received scholarships for both of those camps. Music for Life scholarship, which helped me go to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, and as well as the Oak Park and River Forest Alumni Association scholarship to go to UWM's music clinic. The experience at both of the camps were quite different. Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp was in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, and it was on a forest preserve.
Sounds pretty.
So it was pretty nice. I got the camp experience, like the real camp experience. UWM's music clinic was at the campus, so I got to experience living on campus for 5 days and have the feeling of being a college student. So being a senior, experiencing college,
sure. Get a preview.
Get a preview of what my life will be for the next 4 years.
So what did you learn musically at each of these camps?
Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, both of them had the same setup, quite different. Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, I had to audition in a band, and then I got to my band, and we played pieces, and we did have sectionals. We had sectionals, and we also just practiced. With your sectional leader, you would learn more about your instrument, tonally, the quality of your instrument, where you can buy a piccolo, flutes. You can buy a piccolo, different information about, specifically the flute for me. At the end of the camp, which was about 2 weeks, I believe, we got to perform a recital. So different areas of the camp had recitals of different bands, and your parents and friends came out. And it was a really nice experience. UWM, we had classes, so from each period you would go do a different thing musically. They also had a chance where there was an elective of dance, and there were different, music theory. I took music theory as an elective, and
Very helpful subject.
oh, very. And I'm taking AP music theory now as a senior, so it helped me understand my music more. It was just a really nice
And you know
experience.
what I found is that music theory was very helpful after I'd already learned to play,
Oh yeah,
right? Because all the stuff you're trying to do, suddenly there's a structure for it, and it begins
yeah.
to make sense.
definitely. It definitely is helping me understand notes and the quality of different measures and rhythm, and it's helping me a lot with that, even though I do have a knowledge of that for playing for 10 years, but it's definitely getting me up to the next level, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I think that's pretty exciting. And the great thing that I found about years of playing music is there's always a next level to go to.
Oh yeah.
You never top out.
Yeah.
Can I say something about
Yes.
music camp? Because we have several committees on Ping, and I'm involved. I was on the summer camp, which is now called the Summer Enrichment Committee, for a number of years. I'm not on that now because I'm busy with the mentoring committee and high school and family connections. However, for many years, we've sent students to summer camp. We started with University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, added Blue Lake, added University of Wisconsin-Madison. So Kamille described some of her experiences. We recently forged a relationship with UIC Jazz Camp, and so for 2 summers we've been able to get scholarships for our students to play jazz. And you know, for some families it's a little intimidating to let the kid go to Michigan for 11 days, so I applaud your mom for being brave enough to do it. But some people are reluctant
Oh, I can
to
understand
have
that.
kids go away for such a long time. And so we've been searching for opportunities for, you know, with the Merit Music Program, with UIC, so that we can expand those options. There's
And stay
just-
local for those who
and
can't
stay
really
local
send
for
the kids away
some
for a
students who
week,
would,
right.
you know, rather. But I think that what's been really exciting is to hear from students like Kamille and others about what that experience was like. And music is a really obviously important part of it, and the progress that they demonstrate and the delight that parents express when they go to that concert and hear how much they've improved is remarkable. But there are so many other things that students get from the experience that they share with us and that their parents share at meetings that
You mean
I've
just
held with
personal
family
growth
members.
types of things?
Personal growth, self-confidence, independence, and the students themselves speak of it as a really transformational experience. And it's really exciting for me as a member of the committee when I host meetings for the parents and grandparents and guardians of the 4th and 5th grade students in the spring and of the new mentees in the fall. And I invite so-called veteran parents and grandparents. So Raina, who's Kamille's mom, and others have come, and they've shared their experiences and what they've seen from their students and the way they make friends and connections. And when they come to pick them up and they're afraid that, you know, they will have been homesick and they find their student crying, it's because they can't bear to leave Blue Lake because they've made all these wonderful friends. And so I just see the richness of this opportunity in so many ways. So that's really rewarding.
So let's talk about what music means. You know, we've been talking a lot about how you approach it and what you learn from it. But, you know, there is a portion of society that thinks that the arts are kind of a frivolous, nice-to-have extra in schools. And in times like this, where budgets are really tight, the first thing that gets cut is the arts.
Right.
So I'd like to get each of your perspectives on that. Kamille, let's start with you. I mean, what would it mean to you? Well, not only what would it mean if the arts were cut, but what do you think it's been able, what effect has this artistic endeavor been able to have on you in other areas like learning math or science or English or presentation or whatever?
In all honesty, without humanities, you cannot survive as a person. You have to have a background of art. It can be dance, it can be music, it can be artistic work, but that's the basis of living as a person. And without having that in a school system or having that cut, the children won't be exposed to living as a being. You would basically become a robot and forced to. It makes me so mad talking about this subject, because a person who is artistically creative doesn't have the chance to express that having that cut. What music means, or what art, the humanities mean, with the system is it helps a child grow. It helps a child develop their self-esteem. It helps a child develop independence. And you will see that in their math and their science and everything like that. But the basis of life and the basis of being a person is having the humanities behind it.
I couldn't have said that better myself. Pretty good explanation. Beth, you want to
I think that's wonderful. I
expand
love
on
what
that?
you said, Kamille.
Thank you.
And I feel really passionately about this, and it's actually a subject that I've tried to research, and I once presented to the board of the high school, because what we have encountered, and I was one of the founding members of the committee that extended our mission into the high school, because originally we stopped at the end of 8th grade. And I thought, if we really are serious about supporting students in the arts, and specifically in music, we can't wave goodbye at the end of 8th grade and say good luck. And so I have a large committee this year, and we're doing a lot to promote that. And I've seen, this is the 4th year, and I have 22 students in the high school, and I started with 2. I had 17 last year, so every year more of our students are continuing with music in the high school. But what I encountered originally was some of the dean counselors, I think, discouraging students from signing up for band or orchestra freshman year, and instead suggesting that they do study hall, because there was such a concern that they really needed to focus on academics. And so now when I conduct meetings for the parents of 4th and 5th graders, I plant the seed very early, and I explain that there's a lot of evidence. There's, a lot of social science research that has demonstrated that there's a very profound impact. So exposure, early exposure, and prolonged exposure, playing an instrument for 3 years or longer, correlates with really improved scores in both math and verbal abilities. So that I want to be really sure people understand it isn't just a luxury, like you're talking about, that the art's under siege.
Well, I
in
don't
an
believe that
economy.
personally.
No, I know. No, of course not. I know you're very supportive, but just that this is something that, I think people tend to feel that this is something that's kind of a luxury that can be dispensed with. So in fact, there's a strong link to academic achievement and personal growth and self-esteem.
Definitely.
And all sorts of things, and we see an impact in so many dimensions of our lives. It isn't just the joy and the self-expression, but academic performance, but also the social engagement. And we have families who have said that being in music gives their student a safe place to be in high school. And I've had a grandmother in particular who's described how important it was for her grandson to know that he would be part of marching band and part of a social network at high school, because OPRF is a huge school. And so to have a group of really great kids that you feel part of, that you know that you have a community that you can belong to, is yet another dimension that I think is really important.
I would think also that, go ahead.
If I could add to that.
No, absolutely not. Go ahead.
My freshman year experience, I was in band as well as I had a study hall. So balancing out band as well as my educational habits, I was able to work through that. I was able to have a 3.5, a solid 3.5, as well as working in band and my other extracurricular activities. So like I stated before, without humanities, you can't really work through that. You can't really work through high school, especially freshmen. I mean, they're scared, they're timid to go to high school. And building, kids from marching band that I've talked to, and they just build a safe haven.
Exactly.
So.
I would also think that it gives you an ability to work inside of a team. We talk about team sports being really important because people learn teamwork, but there's lots of ways to learn teamwork.
Right.
And this is another one where in the orchestra, you have a role to play, and if you don't do your part, well, the piece is going to fall apart, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I would think one of the things that strikes me is responsibility, because you have a part to play, and you have to play it well, you have to play it right, and that's what makes the whole piece come together.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things I've experienced on stage when I've performed is the sense that at some point I feel that I'm no longer playing the music. I'm just kind of like a radio. I'm a pass-through. The music is out there somewhere, and it's just coming through me. And I found that to be a really transcendent experience that's hard to replicate anywhere else. And I'm just wondering if that's something that has, or something similar, like if you had moments like that in performance where you kind of lose yourself in the music.
I definitely, all the time. Lose myself all the time. It's just, like I said before, music just comes out. It's just, it's the exposure that I've had and the moments that I've had just playing a piece. Sometimes I don't feel my fingers just going along. I can play a B flat, an E flat, nay, C, it just works like that. The more you're exposed to an instrument, the more you learn about it, the more you learn about yourself, and you would feel it. You won't say, oh, well, I have to put my first finger down to play the B, or it just comes naturally to you.
Sort of like when you really learn how to type, you don't think about the keys anymore.
Oh, yeah. I don't do that either. I don't look at the keys. I just type.
Yeah. So same like you can think of a melody and it comes out your fingers, right?
Definitely.
So Beth, what is that kind of, in child development, there's a certain wiring in the brain that's taking place there. And how does that help overall?
I think there's little question that it helps a lot, but can I jump from the child to the elderly?
Sure.
Because actually there's a dimension of music that I think affects all of us if we live long enough. And this came out in a meeting in the spring when I invited one of the mothers of a former student who's now a sophomore. And in addition to continuing to play violin and having gone to Blue Lake and just loving it, this young woman also does some service. So she goes to nursing homes and she plays her music. And it was really wonderful to hear this because I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Oliver Sacks, who wrote a book about music and the mind, he is a neurologist who studied this subject. And I think the book was called Musicophilia. But if you look, he has an elderly man who's been in a nursing home for about 10 years and was essentially mute because he has dementia. I think he's about 85. And when somebody put an iPod with his personal playlist, because he loved Cab Calloway as a young man, and they put this on and he listened, and you saw this man who had been mute, if anything monosyllabic, he would answer one word only. He began to speak in complete sentences.
Wow.
And he tapped his foot and he sang along, and that music brought that demented brain back to life. Music is amazing.
On that note, we're out of time.
Oh.
So I want to thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. One of my favorite subjects to talk about. So thank you both for coming out and speaking with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us once again on Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. You can find us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19. And you can find us on the web as well at publicperspective.tv. Till next time, thank you and good night.